Good morning. It's a privilege for me to be here because I think that most people see the problems of the world through TV, calmly sat on their armchairs. And the fact that I've been able to come here and have contact with all those people with this event is a privilege. And of course, I want to thank you, apostles, because I'm here because you paid me a lunch, remember? In May, when we came, we arrived late in the evening, and the next day, apostles invited us to lunch over there, in a restaurant, and none of us had euros. And apostles just said, well, it's easier if I pay for everybody. Well, after I withdrew some cash from the ATM, I asked, hey, apostles, how much I owe you? Well, nothing. Well, I know the no free lunch theorem. There are no free lunch. Well, you will invite me later in Christiansen. He was his answer. So, a few days later, we had lunch at the KKK, which is the Kunskapspark Cantina, of course. And apostles went to my office, which is the same building, saw the model, and told me, I want you to show this in Lesbos. Well, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. And that's why I'm here. So, thank you. So, I'm going to present ongoing work by me and other researchers, Ross Gore from VMASC, Lawrence Lefford Phillips from England, and Laron. And this is not a model about refugees, it's a model about immigrants. And is what we call an abstract model. We just, in this model, we don't have NGOs, organizations, or whatever. We just have artificial people with the minimum attributes for explaining something, which is, are they egoist or altruist, depending on barriers due to origin and capability of communication. And when you generate those artificial entities and tie them in a network and use just some simple rules on 3 steps, how do they adjust their ties and change their way of behaving with each other? So basically, this is what the model does, and this is the outline of my presentation. It's very simple. I will just first mention a little background, then present the model, show some results. If someone is interested, I can show you the model. I can show the model actually moving. And finally, I will end up with some discussion. So let's move for the background. This problem of interaction changes between a host population and a population of immigrants over periods of, say, some years has been studied by theorists. And the theorists I like are the ones that identify you clear patterns. And one of the most famous is Berry, which classified the outcomes of acculturation according to 2 simple variables: how important it is for an immigrant to keep its identity, his or her identity, and the importance of relating with host members. And he came out with those 4 types of acculturation strategies. This has the advantage of clarifying the thought, but has also a disadvantage. in the sense that he only focused on the immigrant population and not on the host. And the acculturation process, of course, changes both. So various theory does not tell what those four things are for host, for people from the host population, or even if the host population has the same two types of variables. So, but not only in theory, this has been studied using models. I am showing here just two of them, which try to simulate these processes from very simple rules, exactly in the same way as in the model that I'm going to show you. But these models, they have the advantage of providing understanding. Here you can see the formation of segregation and ethnocentrism patterns from those rules. But they also have disadvantages. More specifically, they focus on segregation only, not on the other three outcomes. And they work out based on space interactions. And most relationships in real life do not imply space proximity. They process themselves in networks. They don't depend on geographic vicinity. So, but it's not only on segregation models that we have to look at. It's also important to analyze what theorists about social conflict have to say. Because theories on social conflict, they identify the values, the types of values that people seek, and actually stability or instability of a society has to do with how these values and the expectations about those values are distributed and evolve. So, from those types of values, some of them are more important than others, but it's interesting to see that communality is exactly the variable that we will simulate in this model. So, communality is your sense of social support that you get from interacting with other people. But finally, it's not only theories that we listen to when building models. When we were here in Karatepe, I asked on the meetings, which, for people that had experience in the camps, which were the factors that led refugees to aggregate or to segregate, to like or dislike. And from what I could get, these were the two main factors. The origin, your shared past, and language, which is communication. And these are exactly the two things that will be put into this model. So the way, in fact, knowledge of people on identified those variables contributed to the outcome of the model. So communality, origin, and language are the things that we are going to see. So what is the model? First, the purpose. To describe the interaction between immigrants and the host population, how this interaction leads to variations of social ties, communication, and cooperation. Over an interval, a simulated interval of time of, say, 2 to 3 years, meaning just one single generation, not second generation immigration. And from the simplest possible terms. Then, how does the model work? First, we have to generate some variables that set up the social context. The most important of this is what we call the likeness matrix. The likeness matrix is an abstract way of representing how individuals from a different origin have a probability or a likeness of interaction with individuals of a different origin. And this lumps a lot of factors, ethnics, religion, whatever. So, because we are, in an abstract model, we are not able to put all those things together and don't have data for that, we just lump and then hope that after we explore the model, questionnaires and other research will bring us values to put in those things. And I have more to say about what likeness is because of a recent discovery that I made. Then, the degree of connectivity, your initial language proficiency, some constants, etc. Then, we generate agents with an origin, a language proficiency, communality, which is your sense of social belonging. Communality here is the currency of the model. And finally, the strategy is, am I altruist or egoist towards my own origin or other origins? Then, tie those agents in an initial small world network. It's a special type of network. And then run the model. For a specified number of cycles, we do the following. First, there are barriers on likeness and communication. If a pair of agents are able to overcome those barriers, then they will interact, and the one with higher language proficiency teaches a little bit to the one with smaller language proficiency, and so one of them will improve their communication ability. And if they are able to interact at this stage, then they play a game of egoism and altruism. And if playing that game, they both change their communality, their sense of what's the social support that I have. And here I have to say something. This is based on game theory concepts, and in game theory, your actual payoff, the currency of the game, is an abstract thing. It can be money, it can be the sense of social support, it can be what matters is when you interact, how much of this you get or give, and furthermore, which one gets more or gets less. And after they play this game, then they do something very important. They individually decide by looking at the network neighbors, who is doing nice. So if I'm having a low communality, but some of my friends are doing better than me, do I have to change? Should I become altruist? I have been egoist, but if I see that other people are having more communality around me, on my neighbors, then I have the decision to change myself. Or else, if the other partner, one of the other partners, defected towards me, I mean, he's a mean guy, then I will just try to cut my tie with him and get another partner. So in this way, you have our barriers of origin, language, and egoism tie up with individual decisions of changing your behavior, changing your ties, and influence how the whole network will evolve and what the cooperation will be after. This third stage is based on an important model of cooperation in networks, whose first author is a professor that was in my PhD committee. And I am fortunate to have met him, and he gave me help on those, on setting up this stage. So, how does the model look like? Just to finish, this is how the model looks like. It's the same system that Erika has shown to us. All the tools in this work are open source. The principles of doing this can be taught, like Erika said. So everyone can download this and start using it, maybe a simpler model, and then build. But here what I have to say is, first, on this left side, you put your input variables. Then this large black thing is the image of the network as it evolved after 2 years of the interaction. You see red dots are people that are ethnocentric. They just cooperate with their own and don't cooperate with the other. Immigrants or hosts. So this model does not have Barry's drawback in the sense that it only has persons. It doesn't matter whether you call them host or immigrant, only the proportions and the likenesses that you specify are important. So here you have the image of the network, and then you can see from the right side is the output. You have the communication, the language proficiency. So after these 2 years, some of the immigrants, they are very proficient in host language. The others just start learning and going up the curve, but host agents don't learn immigrant language, and here you have the learning curves going up. But most important is what you had on those histograms. Those histograms are about the number of ties and the communality for each of the 4 pairs of the strategies. So here you see that by the red bars are for ethnocentric elements. I mean, here both the host population and the immigrant population turn ethnocentric. The host population cooperates mostly with their own, immigrants mostly with their own, and this was created by manipulating just these 2 numbers. And those likenesses tell that immigrants, they like hosts, but hosts don't like immigrants that much. Now, what happens if we change the scenario? Now, immigrants like hosts very much, but hosts still don't like immigrants that much. But notice what happened. What happened is that suddenly all the red bars turned green, meaning that full cooperation prevailed in the network. And the guys that have been previously egoist, they just have a small number of ties and tend to be segregated to the periphery of the network, whereas the core of agents with most ties, they form a central core with everybody cooperating with everybody. But we can change the scenario again. Imagine that immigrants still like hosts very much, but hosts are very negative towards immigrants. Well, in this way, you can see the situation turning around again. Actually, behind those red bars, you see there are green bars. And here in the network plot, you can see that lots of people are cooperating, lots of them are ethnocentric, so you have both, you have mixed attitudes, and the model can describe those mixed attitudes as you change the parameters. So, these were just 3 simple simulations, but to be systematic, you need to sweep over parameters and build what is the landscape of the model. So you can see on that right-hand side that the 2 things that control the egoism model, the 3rd step, you can see that there are regions where the prevalent strategy is cooperation, full cooperation, others in which there is cooperation towards your own origin or towards the other, and there are regions also where you have full defection. If your egoism barrier, if you set the egoism barrier high, then everybody will just be egoist, and both for host and for immigrants. So it's how the model is explored. And for a little discussion, well, these are the questions we hope to answer with this model. We are currently preparing a paper. We are just trying to wrap up all those things and lay out all those explorations to present answers to these questions. And some words about parameterization and validation. So, how do we set those likenesses? How do we set those language thresholds and language barriers? Well, we cannot have data from proportion of immigrants in 399 municipalities in Norway, which helps us setting ranges for the proportion of immigrants. And for that, we just select the cities. Trondheim is the one with the smallest proportion of immigrants. Oslo, largest. So we have ranges. We can use this. And there are, from some other variables, we can infer the likeness of Norwegians towards immigrants. And it turns out that this likeness does not depend just on religion or ethnics or whatever. It depends on the context. If you ask people where they like immigrants for work, they will give you an answer. If you ask them if they like immigrants for marrying a daughter or a son, you get a different likeness. So the model can be used for different types of integration of immigrants in the society. And we also have also plausible values for the likeness. Also, the likeness is influenced by the way you ask questions. If you ask questions by the positive, you get a higher likeness. But if you ask questions on the risk of immigrants, do immigrants pose a risk? Do immigrants abuse our system? Then you get, if you process those values and try to reverse, you get lower values. So in social science, you can't do that. You can't reverse a negative because reversing a negative is not equivalent to a positive. And it also means that the agenda, the way the media depict immigrants influences those parameters that led to the thing turning red or green. And we also have data for the proportion of mixed links for Norway. So, and can this information from Norway be used at Lesbos? This is my discussion. Can we use the same surveys or other surveys? So this is for someone interested in sociology. If someone is interested on this problem, then we can sit after the session to tell her to put up which observation system will allow us to monitor how the likeness of the Lesbos locals is towards immigrants and over time, which is important. Also, the language model. There are people teaching languages at the camps. Can they help us calibrate those learning curves? Are those learning curves realistic? And finally, is someone interested in learning how this is done? It's not that hard to teach that, and the tools are open source. And so, sorry, I think that I overstepped my time, which is a mortal sin in presentations. But I will go to hell anyway.